Good evening. Welcome to the March 10, 2021 meeting of the Brighton Town Board. I'm Bill Maley, Brighton Town Supervisor. I want to welcome you tonight. I call the meeting to order. This meeting is being conducted remotely on Zoom and broadcast in Brighton on Spectrum Cable Channel 1303, our community access channel. And it's also being live streamed on the town's YouTube channel, all in compliance with the Governor's executive order modifying the open meetings law to enable local government bodies to continue to meet remotely during the pandemic. Now I'm going to take things a little bit out of order tonight because we have both the State of the Town address as well as the presentation of the draft police reform plan by Chief Cafaldi, and those will take a while. So if there's anyone that wants to call into the open forum now, you can do so at 303-3060, and someone will take your call and pass along your question or comments to me, and again, I'll address them before the State of the Town message if I can. We continue to make our meetings accessible to the deaf and hard of hearing community with our ASL interpreters. We have Heather and Allie with us tonight as usual. Thank you both. Just as a reminder, the agenda for tonight's meeting and the materials we're reviewing and making our decisions tonight are all available on the Town of Brighton webpage, www.townofbrighton.org. We'll start the meeting with the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Tonight we have three proclamations. The first one is in recognition and honor of Women's History Month, the month of March. Whereas the roots of Women's History Month can be traced to March 8, 1857, when female garment workers in New York City protested for equal rights and a 10-hour workday. And whereas the first Women's History Week was created by President Jimmy Carter in 1980 to underscore women's achievements and show support for the Equal Rights Amendment, which proposed guaranteeing equal rights under the law and prohibiting discrimination based on sex. Whereas Women's History Month was established in 1987 by President Ronald Reagan to commemorate and encourage the study, observance, and celebration of the vital role of women in American history and society. And whereas since many of the women's suffrage centennial events originally scheduled for 2020 were curtailed, the annual theme for Women's History Month 2021 is an extension of last year's Valiant Women of the Vote, and now Valiant Women of the Vote refusing to be silenced. And whereas women of the suffrage movement, including our local luminaries, Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton, were keenly aware that participation in government is vital to equality, and spent more than 70 years engaged in protests and activism, making the cause of women's suffrage one of the largest movements ever in American history. Whereas valiant women of the vote, refusing to be silenced, fittingly captures the spirit of these challenging times, as numerous federal and state representatives strive to drastically limit people's rights to vote through tactics expressly aimed at suppressing the vote of black and brown people, poor people across the country. Whereas in celebrating Women's History Month and honoring the legacy of the women's suffrage movement, we lend our voices to those of our forebears to support the restoration of the Voting Rights Act of 1965 and repudiate any attempt to suppress voting, knowing that full, open access to voting for all is essential to our democracy. Now therefore be it proclaimed that I, William W. Maley, Brighton Town Supervisor, and the members of the Brighton Town Board do hereby recognize March 2021 as Women's History Month in the town of Brighton and celebrate the 101st anniversary of the women's right nationwide to vote. This proclamation is signed the 10th day of March 2021. Tonight, our second proclamation recognizes Jewish War Veterans of the United States Day, a group that is near and dear to many of us. Whereas the Jewish War Veterans of the United States of America is the oldest continuously active veteran service organization in the nation, celebrating its 125th anniversary this year. Whereas established on March 15, 1896, by 63 Jewish veterans of the Civil War to challenge anti-Semitic rumors that no Jews fought for the Union. Today, the Jewish War Veterans membership includes veterans from World War II through all current combat, conflicts, and active duty personnel. And whereas pledging, quote, to uphold the fair name of the Jew and fight his or her battles wherever justly assailed, to encourage the doctrine of universal liberty, equal rights, and full justice to all men and women. The organization established Jewish chaplaincy during World War I and successfully campaigned for religious and racial protection in the GI Bill of 1944. Whereas committed, quote, to combat the powers of bigotry and darkness wherever originating and whatever they target, and to preserve the spirit of comradeship by mutual helpfulness to comrades and their families, the Jewish War Veterans supported the Deborah Sampson Act, which was enacted in January of 2021 to secure access to quality health care and benefits for our nearly 2 million women veterans. Whereas Brighton's David J. Kaufman Post, number 41, of the Jewish War Veterans, has consistently given back to the community, leading an annual memorial service for recently deceased Jewish veterans and fundraising efforts for Brighton's Veterans Memorial, in addition to volunteering for and donating money to community organizations such as the Brighton Food Cupboard, Veterans Outreach Center, Jewish Senior Life, and the Jewish Community Center. And whereas in celebration of the 125th anniversary of the Jewish War Veterans of the United States of America, we honor those of the Jewish faith who have served and do currently serve in the armed forces, humbly risking their lives in service to protect us all. Now therefore be it proclaimed that I, William W. Maley, Brighton Town Supervisor, on behalf of all the members of the Brighton Town Board, do hereby recognize March 15, 2021 as Jewish War Veterans of the United States of America Day in the town of Brighton, celebrating the organization's 125th anniversary and thanking the David J. Kaufman Post 41 of the Jewish War Veterans of the United States of America for working for the betterment of Brighton and upholding the values of democracy. This proclamation is signed March 10, 2021. And I do want to thank the members of the Kaufman Post for all that you do for our community. And I'm sorry we haven't been able to meet in person over the past year, but we will. And I thank you for your service, both in uniform and to the community. finally, a proclamation recognizing AmeriCorps Week 2021. Whereas service to others is a hallmark of the American character, and throughout our history, citizens have stepped up to meet our challenges by volunteering to their communities. Whereas founded in 1994, AmeriCorps provides opportunities for nearly 270,000 Americans to serve their country through their commitment to service at nonprofits, schools, public agencies, and community and faith-based groups across the country. And whereas AmeriCorps members and AmeriCorps seniors volunteers encourage collaboration and partnerships, leveraging millions of volunteers in service and acquiring the support of business partners to increase the effectiveness of their initiatives. Whereas Monroe Community College sponsors Rochester AmeriCorps and enrolls members each year who are placed at a variety of community-based organizations to improve students' academic engagement and success in the City of Rochester schools. Whereas service enriches the lives of AmeriCorps members and AmeriCorps senior volunteers as they become active participants in civic matters affecting their communities, and for AmeriCorps members also developing valuable work skills and earning money for continuing education. Whereas AmeriCorps Week is a time to recognize the dedication and commitment of the more than 1 million Americans who have chosen to serve their country through AmeriCorps, and to encourage more Americans to follow their footsteps in service. Now therefore be it proclaimed that I, William W. Maley, Brighton Town Supervisor, on behalf of the members of the Brighton Town Board, do hereby recognize March 7 through March 13, 2021, is AmeriCorps Week in the town of Brighton. And we thank AmeriCorps members, AmeriCorps senior volunteers, and alumni for their service, and urge citizens to find their own ways of giving back to the community. And this proclamation is signed the 10th day of March, 2021. I had the really eye-opening experience of working under the supervision of AmeriCorps volunteers down in New Orleans in the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina, working on a habitat project in the lower Ninth Ward. And anybody that knows me knows that I'm not Tim Allen. I am no tool-time guy. But these AmeriCorps volunteers, not volunteers, I mean they're volunteers, they do receive, some consideration, but they're really volunteers, really had developed carpentry skills and leadership skills. And they were able to supervise our work in the very hot July sun, but I had heard about AmeriCorps, but had never really gotten up close and personal with it. And that really solidified my respect for what they do as an organization, made me feel very strongly about their continued service when there were efforts made to abolish them a few years back. And I've seen them working here in Rochester on Habitat for Humanity projects, and now their primary work is with the school district. So it's a great organization, and I'm very proud to be able to recognize this week as AmeriCorps Week. Thank you. We have not received any calls during the open forum, so I will continue, and we can go to speaker view for the State of the Town message. And I want to thank all of you who are joining tonight to discuss the state of the town of Brighton for 2021. I would first acknowledge...
I'm sorry, this is Bridget cutting in. We are not having good audio on the YouTube version. What's coming through on cable is working just fine. The tech crew believes there's something they wait a moment.
We can do that.
Okay, it shouldn't take long at all, and I'll check back
Okay.
in with you very shortly.
Thanks, Bridget. I saw the earlier message that it seemed like it was fixed, but thanks for
Okay, thanks. Well, that went faster than anticipated. Everything is working, so you can continue on, Supervisor.
Wonderful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And again, thanks everybody for joining us tonight for the State of the Town of Brighton 2021. I'll first acknowledge that while we meet remotely, the town of Brighton is situated on the ancestral and traditional lands of the Onondaga tribe of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, whom we recognize and respect as the traditional custodians of this land throughout the generations. We pay our respect to the Onondaga elders, both past and present. The history, culture, and traditions of the Onondaga are worthy of our understanding and study, and we praise those who keep their traditions alive. We recognize that the study is of ongoing importance if we are to truly understand the history of our community and our nation, and we support all efforts to ensure that we and future generations continue that study and that respect in a way that is honest and truthful, so that in the words of the great chief and orator, Sakajawatha, we may always work together to brighten the chain of friendship. Tonight, as we look towards the future, and frankly, we all are yearning to see the future like never before, we must also look back at the year past, 2020. If Pearl Harbor was the date that will live in infamy, perhaps 2020 will be known as the year that will live in infamy. As Queen Elizabeth II once famously said in a very different context, it was truly annus horribilis. 2020, though, was a year that saw remarkable work and remarkable courage on the part of people working on the front lines of the pandemic, from healthcare workers to people caring for residents of group homes and senior living communities, to supermarket workers. Frankly, though, it was also a year that saw failures from the highest levels in Washington, where the administration refused to acknowledge the seriousness and significance of the pandemic, refused to model appropriate health behavior, and put our democracy at risk. It also saw failures closer to home, when Daniel Prude was forced to lie face down with his head in a sack on icy cold pavement, surrounded by people whose job it was to help the community and the people they served, including Daniel Prude. But instead, they demonstrated a profound indifference to the life of one Black man lying alone on the streets of Rochester. Since that time, we've seen 3 additional high-profile incidents, one just this morning, that call into serious question the policies and training of the Rochester Police Department, particularly as it relates to the use of force as opposed to de-escalation when dealing with mental health issues. Daniel Prude's life and his death must not have been in vain. The Brighton Police Department is an entirely separate agency from the Rochester Police Department, with its own training, hiring practice, and a very different guiding philosophy of community policing. I have the highest confidence in the leadership and the members of the Brighton Police Department. However, Mr. Prude's death and state directives require that all law enforcement agencies re-examine their operations and their philosophy of service. Tonight, the Brighton Police Department will be presenting the draft police reform plan as required by Governor Cuomo's Executive Order 203. I will talk more in a moment about the Brighton Police Department and the community policing philosophy that is at the heart of the service they provide to our community. Even as we look back at a pandemic that has changed the world as we knew it and impacted us in so many ways, Brighton was better prepared for rapid and involuntary change than most. And we will continue to be prepared for the changes needed as we emerge from the pandemic. The same attitudes and core values that I've cited in the past to explain Brighton's strength as a community are the same values and attributes that have helped carry Brighton and our neighbors through this past year. Because of that, because of the work of our public health heroes and essential workers, the work of our educators, and the work of parents and grandparents who were thrust into new roles as educators. And in spite of the crises we have faced during the past year and must continue to address, the state of the town of Brighton, and more importantly, the future of the town of Brighton, is strong. Tonight, I want to share with you how we've responded to a year of COVID and unrest, and how we continue to move forward together as a community. 1 year ago, almost to the day, the town of Brighton, the state of New York, and the nation went into COVID lockdown. I will always have the enduring memory of my semi-annual visit to Brighton High School's law and government class, where I speak each semester with the combined sections of that class and conduct a mock town board public hearing to give the students the opportunity to experience and participate in local government. It was Friday, March 13th, as fitting a date as possible. And as I looked out at the 60 or so seniors in the auditorium-style classroom at Brighton High School, I couldn't help but think that I was sharing their last traditional day of high school with them. And as challenging as the rest of the school year was, I can't say enough about the administration, teachers, parents, and students who pivoted so quickly to remote education. And as I watched many of those same students drive by my home a few months later in the seniors' graduation car parade, I was proud of each one of them. And I hope that in some way they were stronger for the experience, even if it was an experience we would not wish on anyone. As I've often said, education, along with sustainability and diversity and inclusion, are Brighton's core values that have made our Brighton community extraordinary. For too long, New York State has failed to provide contractually mandated foundation aid to the Brighton Central School District. While other districts, including the Rochester City School District, were also impacted by these foundation aid shortfalls, no district in New York State has felt a larger percentage shortfall than the Brighton Central School District, a shortfall that has now reached over 50% this year. Brighton now has 2 new state representatives in Albany, Senator Jeremy Cooney and Assembly Member Sarah Clerk. Both of them have recognized the seriousness of the funding shortfall, and they have already sponsored legislation that would ensure that at the very least, all school districts, including Brighton, would be assured of foundation aid funding at a rate of at least 70% of mandated levels. This is a good start, and I've written to both of these representatives expressing my support for their legislation and for funding education more fairly and more systematically in Brighton and across New York State. At the same time our schools were reinventing themselves, the town of Brighton was doing the same. Throughout the process, my primary goal was to protect the health and safety of our town staff, the people who wanted or needed to interact with the town and the community at large, while still providing essential town services. Relying on the guidance of public health officials, I declared a state of emergency in Brighton due to COVID and issued a series of emergency orders, temporarily modifying provisions of the town code to protect the public health here in Brighton and to facilitate the extraordinary measures that small businesses were taking to stay in business safely. We streamlined the process for installing tents at restaurants to allow expanded outdoor dining throughout the summer. We temporarily allowed recreational vehicles to park in driveways to allow family members to isolate safely at home. We worked with Temple Brith Kodesh in Monroe County to establish a drive-through COVID testing site that has served thousands of people throughout the area and continues to operate, helping public officials track the spread of COVID in our community. I'm grateful to Temple Brith Kodesh Executive Director Mike Udelson and Rabbi Peter Stein for facilitating this important testing program. Throughout it all, town staff continue to work, continue to serve the community, and I want to acknowledge their continued leadership in adapting to COVID. I also want to thank them for their commitment to developing and adhering to safety plans that allowed town operations to continue with a very low rate of infection. As part of that acknowledgement, I want to thank my colleagues on the town board who are all with us tonight: Jason DePonzio, Chris Werner, Robin Wilt, and Christine Corrado, as well as Dan Amon, and all the residents who volunteer their time and talent to serve on our volunteer boards. This year more than ever, it's clear that municipal government cannot do everything alone. So I'm especially grateful for my colleagues in government and education that are with us tonight, and those others who could not be here. I particularly want to express my deep appreciation for the work of Monroe County Public Health Director, Dr. Mike Mendoza, who has been accessible at all hours of the day and a voice of wisdom and calm throughout the pandemic. Just last Sunday night at about 9 o'clock, it took Dr. Mendoza all of 5 minutes to return a text of mine with a question that I had regarding the intersection of quarantines and vaccination affecting one of our town employees. None of us could ask for more than that. Thank you, Dr. Mendoza. The men and women of the Highway Department picked up lawn and garden debris all summer, focused on leaf pickup during the fall, and continue to conduct ice and snow removal from our streets and sidewalks. Well, I hope you don't have to do that anymore, but we all know you probably will. Throughout, using one person per vehicle at all times. I am very pleased that just yesterday, the state of New York finally authorized highway and sewer workers, as well as all public-facing municipal employees, to receive vaccines, although this is something we have been requesting for quite some time. Kudos to Highway and Sewer Superintendent and Commissioner of Public Works, Mike Guyon, who led our outstanding men and women throughout this year and took the lead in many of our COVID planning activities. One of the most important components of taking Town Hall remote came from our IT department. Jeremy Lutz saw to it that key staff could not only work remotely during the pandemic, but also continue to address the long-term IT needs, IT maintenance, cybersecurity, and all the vital components of the town's IT department to better serve, so that we could better serve the residents under any set of circumstances. Town Clerk Dan Amon wears many hats, and his role has never been more important than during this past year, as his office has done so much to serve the community remotely. Dan always has customer service at heart, and he went out of his way to find new ways to serve the public safety during the pandemic. He also took on the important position, unpaid I might add, of deputy supervisor during the pandemic in order to ensure high quality continuity of government, no matter what eventuality occurred. Even though Town Hall was closed during the first months of the pandemic, either Town Finance Director Paula Parker or Deputy Finance Director Suzanne Zaso were often in the office, regularly in the office, ensuring that payroll was completed properly, and that the bills were being paid on time. Paula and Suzanne responded to an impending revenue shortfall as we prepared the 2021 budget, and they've continued to stay on top of the fiscal impacts of the pandemic. With their help, we've made the tough decisions that have preserved the strength of Brighton's finances. I want to thank Congressmember Joe Morelli and Senators Schumer and Gillibrand for their steadfast support of federal aid for all local municipalities in the new COVID relief legislation. That funding will make a significant difference to Brighton's fiscal stability and will enable us to maintain and enhance community services going forward. The Finance Department also works with our Personnel Director, Tricia Van Putty, who had to learn a new vocabulary of relief measures for personnel issues arising out of COVID. Those measures changed literally daily, and I commend Tricia for her ability to process and apply those changes and communicate those changes to our staff over the past year. Thank you, Tricia. 2020 forced us to re-examine the role of law enforcement and the philosophy used by our law enforcement agencies. During my time working for the town of Brighton, first as attorney and now as supervisor, I've worked with and watched 3 police chiefs, Chiefs Tom Vogel, Mark Henderson, and now Dave Cathaldi, each of whom wholeheartedly committed the department to community policing, based on a philosophy of serving as guardians, protecting the community rather than warriors. I can also say that each one has moved the bar higher as we continue to lean into the importance of the engagement of law enforcement with all members of the community. Tonight, Chief Cathaldi will present the proposed Brighton Police Reform Plan as mandated by Governor Cuomo in his Executive Order 203. The plan draws upon feedback from the community, generated from a survey conducted by the RIT Center for Public Safety Initiatives, and a community meeting held at Temple Brith Kodesh by the Monroe County Alliance for the Transformation of Community and Police, otherwise known as MCAT-CP, and also recommendations from community organizations such as the United Christian Leadership Ministries, whose work has been incredibly valuable to me and to Chief Cathaldi, as well as President Obama's task force on 21st century policing. Each of these and additional supporting information are attached to the proposed plan. The RIT study, which includes over 850 responses, indicates that 90% of all respondents expressed satisfaction with the Brighton Police Department. In addition, 82% of the respondents who are members of what the study refers to as marginalized communities, people of color, people with disabilities, members of the LGBTQ community, and others, also expressed satisfaction with the department. These are exceptional numbers, which show broad support throughout the Brighton community for the work of the Brighton Police Department. Still, we know we can do more and must do more. The plan recommendations include commitments to improve hiring practices to develop a more diverse department, community outreach and communication, with a particular emphasis on outreach to those the study identifies as marginalized communities, and enhanced training in de-escalation tactics and mental health. Each of these areas is currently being addressed by the Brighton Police Department, but there is more we can do, and as I said a moment ago, more we will do. I also want to acknowledge our other frontline first responders, both career and volunteer, from the Brighton Fire Department and Brighton Volunteer Ambulance. Brighton's 3 public safety agencies often work together as a team, and I thank you all for helping keep Brighton safe. I do want to note that there will be a remote community meeting on the proposed Brighton Police Reform Plan next Tuesday at 7 p.m. remotely, and we'll be posting information on that meeting tomorrow, but the community is invited. The pandemic has made it difficult for courts everywhere to operate, but I respect and appreciate the work that the judges and staff of the Brighton Town Court have put in to continue to operate as best as possible, subject not only to public health guidelines, but also rules and guidelines imposed by the New York State Office of Court Administration. Judges Falk and Morris, Court Administrator Lisa Pavlovich, and all of the court staff have done their level best to serve people, many of whom are not too happy to be in the court in the first place. The pandemic led people everywhere outdoors, and our parks have received unprecedented usage during the past year, despite restrictions on the use of lodges and other facilities, such as basketball courts. The pandemic also made people hungry for connections with other people, particularly our seniors who have been so vulnerable to COVID and isolated by the shutdowns. The Brighton Parks and Brighton Recreation Departments, led by Matt Beeman and Becky Cotter respectively, have responded to all of these issues. The Brighton Parks Department has kept up with park maintenance, despite the challenge that COVID has caused their own staff. The Recreation Department has held remote programming, and even some socially distanced in-person programming, all in compliance with public health guidelines. In particular, the Recreation Department has worked with seniors to ensure that they stay connected in order to help protect their mental and their physical health. I'm pleased to announce that during tonight's town board meeting, Matt, Becky, and I will be asking the board to approve a request for proposals for professional services to advise the town on preparing a survey to assess community recreational needs and evaluate future facility operation options for providing such services. I look forward to working with Matt and Becky, as well as Mike Guyon and the volunteer members of our Parks and Recreation Advisory Board as we chart this course forward. The Brighton Memorial Library normally serves thousands of people each year. This year, the library closed for several months, but following the example of so many small businesses, set up a curbside operation that provided a link to much of the physical material in the Brighton Memorial Library's collection, in addition to all the online services they already offer. The library is now reopened, but curbside service is still available, and I thank Executive Director Jennifer Reese-Taggart for navigating these difficult times. Our town assessor, Sue Wentworth, deals directly with our residents, particularly, again, our senior residents, and she's continued to do so throughout the past year. Sue has met with residents in the parking lot where she's had to handle their paperwork and questions, and she stayed current on all of the current changing rules determined by the state during the pandemic. For the most part, her customers are no longer walking in the door, but the assessor's office continues to help residents as if they were standing right there in front of her. Thank you, Sue. The job of town attorney has never been more important, and following a reorganization of our legal services last year, Ken Gordon is now responsible for planning and zoning work, as well as code enforcement on behalf of the town, in addition to his previous responsibilities. Ken now can provide a holistic analysis of our legal issues and continues to do so from the perspective not only of a seasoned lawyer, but also someone who has held local office right here in Brighton. In keeping with Brighton's tradition of being first to implement important sustainability and environmental policies, I'm very pleased that we are now the first and only community in Monroe County to have implemented community choice aggregation. CCA is a New York State Public Service Commission regulated plan that allows us to replace the incumbent utility electricity supplier, in our case, RG&E, with a new supplier, Source Power, selected through competitive bidding, who will supply renewable energy to residents and small businesses in Brighton. Based on numbers I received just today, 10,506 residential and small business accounts in Brighton, approximately 85% of our eligible customers now use 100% renewable source energy generated in New York State through hydropower facilities as members of our Community Choice Aggregation Program. Contrary to traditional thinking that you have to pay more for clean energy, the cost of this renewable energy per kilowatt hour is very slightly less than the average price per kilowatt hour over the last 2 years for traditional non-renewable RG&E electric supply. And the price of electricity under our CCA is fixed for 2 years. Those of us who watched the chaotic price increases in Texas after the recent cold spell there can understand the benefits of a fixed price for electricity. I know that some residents still have questions, and I'm pleased that the feedback on the CCA customer service phone line has been very positive. In particular, I know there have been some budget billing accounts that were not properly transferred over by RG&E. But I can tell you that the Rocktricity customer service team has been working through those accounts one by one. If you're one of those people with a budget billing problem, or if you have any questions about your utility bill, or if you weren't switched over to CCA, but you would now like to take advantage of low prices for renewable energy, please call Rocktricity at 244-0244. That's 244-0244 for CCA customer service. As I've already noted, 2020 will be remembered not just for the pandemic, but for the need for all of us in government and all of us as individuals to address issues of social justice that have too long been ignored. The Town of Brighton Idea Board, Inclusion, Diversity, and Equity Advisory Board is hard at work developing a diversity and inclusion plan for the Town of Brighton. And in fact, tomorrow evening, I'll be joining the Idea Board for a Zoom call with officials from Beaverton, Oregon, a city that is similar in size to Brighton that has developed a diversity plan. In particular, we're interested in learning how Beaverton has implemented their plan because it's been in effect now for a couple of years. We don't have models like Beaverton closer to home because when it comes to this important work, Brighton is first again. When completed, Brighton will be the first and only town in upstate New York with a diversity and inclusion plan. Tonight, I'm also committing that the Town of Brighton will engage in racial justice training for all of our employees, very possibly in concert with other area communities that are prioritizing this training. And I also want to commend the residents of Meadowbrook and Cord confronting our racist deeds for your work in taking legal action to rescind the racist covenants in the chain of title to each of your homes and replacing that language with anti-racist language. I encourage other residents of Brighton to follow this example, whether individually or in your neighborhoods, in order to rescind racial or ethnic covenants to your properties. Economic justice is also a very real issue, highlighted by the ongoing debate at the federal level about raising the federal minimum wage from $7.25 per hour, a rate that hasn't changed since 2009, despite 12 years of inflation. The state of New York has a higher minimum wage. And when I became supervisor, the Town of Brighton committed to pay all full-time employees at least a living wage. But in light of the apparent failure of a minimum wage increase to $15 an hour to pass in Congress, once again, it is time for Brighton to be first and to do more. Therefore, I'm committing to all of our Brighton employees, full and part-time and seasonal, that in line with the proposal for a gradual increase in the federal minimum wage that was before Congress, we here in Brighton will increase the minimum wage for all Brighton employees to $15 per hour by 2025. That increase will have a modest impact on our budget, but more importantly, it will have a very real and positive impact on the people who serve our residents. As I did last year, I also want to update the community on the progress towards redeveloping the parcel at the interchange of 590 and Monroe Avenue for commercial use, the Whole Foods Plaza. For those who do not follow this project closely, in 2018, the town board approved a proposal first submitted in 2015 for a 50,000 square foot Whole Foods grocery store, the first in the Rochester area, along with other retail space and a Starbucks. The total project size would be about 80,000 square feet, all to be constructed on land that is zoned for commercial development. And just for comparison's sake, that 50,000 square foot Whole Foods store compares to a Wegmans store down the street of over 130,000 square feet. 5 public hearings were held on the Whole Foods Plaza, and the town conditioned its approval on the developer installing various traffic safety mitigation measures on Monroe Avenue at their sole expense, and acquiring rights of way and constructing the Auburn Trail running from Highland Avenue to the Pittsford Town line between Clover Street and I-590, connecting with the existing Auburn Trail in Pittsford, again, at the developer's sole expense. When acquired and constructed, the Auburn Trail will allow safe walking and biking to the Harley School and to businesses and neighborhoods, again, at no expense to taxpayers for that construction. The developer will also grant a conservation easement to the town to serve as a buffer to Clover Street. And let me be absolutely clear on this. The project will pay full taxes, estimated at approximately $400,000 per year upon completion. Those taxes will include about $200,000 in taxes per year for the Brighton Central School District, which, as we just discussed, is seriously underfunded by the state and needs additional sources of revenue to continue its tradition of academic excellence. Construction on the Starbucks is well underway, and construction on the Auburn Trail and the traffic safety mitigation improvements are also expected to begin soon. This project will eliminate the vacant eyesore that currently greets visitors to our community and will help promote economic development along Monroe Avenue without causing any significant traffic impact. In the years to come, Brighton will have new shopping options and new tax base to support our continued strength as a community, traffic safety improvements, and a new trail. All thanks to the approval and construction and development of the Whole Foods Plaza. And to that point, to the point of our fiscal position, the town of Brighton was fiscally impacted by the pandemic. The significant drop in sales tax revenues, hundreds of thousands of dollars, was the primary factor, but we also experienced reductions in parks and recreation program revenues and in facilities and field rentals, among others. We did receive a share of CARES Act funding from the county that mitigated certain impacts, and we are anticipating support from the new federal COVID relief package, which will for the first time include direct funding to municipalities like Brighton, although it will come with significant restrictions on how those funds can be used. Brighton's fiscal condition overall continues to be strong. Our Moody's AA2 bond rating remains unchanged, And the New York State Comptroller has again determined that Brighton has among the lowest levels of fiscal stress in the state. We will remain strong as the pandemic recedes, and we will continue to use all suitable means to fund the programs and the services that people move to Brighton to enjoy. Each of you has contributed to making Brighton strong in many ways. Whether it's your commitment to following public health guidelines during a pandemic, volunteering on a community board or organization, or assuming the role of educator to your children or your grandchildren in hybrid classes, you have helped build a better Brighton this very difficult year, 2020. You have helped make Brighton first in our community in so many ways, a model that other communities aspire towards. It is a privilege and it's an honor to serve as your town supervisor. I thank each of you for being here tonight remotely and for the things you do, the many things that you do, large and small, to make us all proud to call Brighton our hometown. Thank you. And we will now go to Police Chief Dave Cathaldi, who, as I mentioned, will be making a presentation on the proposed Brighton Police Department reform plan. Chief?
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Let me share my screen. There we go. Mr. Supervisor, member of the town boards, thank you for trusting me in helping to create this draft plan and present it this evening. I'm always proud to be able to speak as your chief of police. Without the support of the elected leadership of this town, we couldn't have such a well-respected police department. Let me caution you when you read the plan. I'm not a wordsmith by trade, but I like to think I have the passion to convey that your department is here to provide a high level of service to the community. This is just an overview of our discussion tonight. I like to think of this as an opportunity to create positive change, not only in our agency, but a way to create stronger bonds between the police and the communities we serve. Everything you will read in the plan centers around what we've done as an agency and how we can improve our service to the community. I like to think we are years ahead of the curve because community policing has been ingrained in every officer in our department. I'll discuss our efforts when it comes to training, to include our leadership training and how we have a culture that fosters those efforts. I'll also discuss some of our efforts when it comes to community engagement and the community outreach we have been doing for years. Lastly, I'll briefly discuss how the 21st Century Task Force on Policing has positioned our department. As you know, in June of last year, the governor signed an executive order requiring each chief executive from the local municipality to work in coordination with the chief of police to gather stakeholders to examine policing in their respective communities. Our efforts in creating this plan started back in August when we engaged with stakeholders at Temple Growth Kodesh to hear from the community, to hear their thoughts about community policing, and insight was gained about policing topics that aided what I have here in this plan. This draft plan will be put out to the public for 2 weeks, and after comments are heard, will be up for adoption by the town board no later than April 1st. Then, of course, the town has to certify it and complete the process. During the presentation, I'll discuss our organizational structure, the culture and philosophy of the department, some of our training initiatives, our body-worn camera program, police discipline, our interagency relationships with other law enforcement agencies, and our community interactions. This chart describes the structure of our department. It simply shows that orders and command flow from the top on down. It is hierarchical in nature, and it is led by the town board and town supervisor. This model also provides clear lines of authority internally within the organization, which allows for command and control. The chart was last updated in 2018 with the addition of a third lieutenant spot to add accountability on each respective shift. Our staffing levels have remained constant for over 20 years. We have a current authorized strength of 40 full-time sworn officers who work in the community and 6 part-time sworn officers who strictly provide court security and are restricted to inside the facility. We currently have 3 vacancies, which brings down our full-time staff to 37. I've held those vacancies for some time now, looking for diversity hires. This is from citydata.com. As you can see from the chart, our community's almost 80% white. However, we are a very diverse community. There are 5 public schools within Brighton and several private and parochial schools. We may be known to have one of the larger Jewish populations outside of New York City here in Brighton, but we are also home to one of the largest mosques in the area, which leads to strong interfaith alliances. Even though the nighttime population is about 36,000 residents, the population swells during the day with large office parks, colleges, and commuter traffic. And our staffing levels adjust to reflect that change. As I said, we have a very diverse staff in Brighton, and I would argue one of the most diverse departments in Monroe County outside of the city of Rochester. I believe that the 90% response rate from the survey, who stated that we are professional, directly correlates with 86% of our staff, 37 college educated members who have a college degree. We actually have 3 officers who also have master's degrees. Diversity in law enforcement has been a constant struggle for law enforcement around the country, and that includes locally. We have made gains. We currently have 5 females within the sworn staff, and one of those females has a first-line supervisory position. Women have a place in policing, and research suggests they actually have lower incidences of use of force than their male counterparts. We continue to identify opportunities for career growth and for recruiting more females into the profession. The 11% figure when it comes to diversity. We currently have 3 Hispanic officers, 1 Black officer, and 1 officer demographically identified as other, which equates to about 11% of our sworn staff. Again, we are trying to diversify our department as much as possible, but civil service laws can be a barrier, and all agencies are recruiting from the same small pool of candidates in Monroe County. We did promote the first Hispanic captain ever last year. There are only 2 captains in the organizational chart, and this is a senior level command position within the department. I hope to have more exciting news to come in 2021. Our civilian staff includes all the professionals who support our mission, but just are not sworn officers. These include our administrative office staff, crossing guards, and animal control officers. As you can see, we have 9% of our civilian staff, and they're made up of 2 Black females, which also creates a very diversified civilian staff. Written policies only provide guide rails for the officers. When we get members to internalize our methods and why we do what we do, we win and the community wins. We've been an accredited law enforcement agency since 1991, the very first in Monroe County to be state accredited. We actually have reaccreditation this June. Monroe County is actually the only county in New York State to have all of its law enforcement agencies accredited. We are one of only 25% of the agencies in New York State that are accredited. We completed a total overhaul of our policies, which started in 2017 and ended in 2019. We have come a long way from a paper and pen method, which was cumbersome at best. Our policy management company provides us with a combination of lawyers, which provide legally vetted policies, law enforcement experts to provide best practices, and a way to ensure we have the most up-to-date policies. It would be nearly impossible to keep up to date with the New York State legal changes and changes implemented by the Division of Criminal Justice Services which is the controlling body for law enforcement in New York State. With our policy management system, we also have a mechanism to train our officers monthly on the policies, and all of that data can be tracked relative to policy acceptance and training. Our Guardian philosophy is created from our hiring standards to the onboarding process to our field training program and our ongoing continual training. This philosophy has been internalized in our members. We are here to serve the public. We also have one supervisor for every 3 to 4 officers, and those supervisors are actively at scenes to assist and provide direction to staff. Usually when a problem occurs at a scene, one of my first questions is, where was the supervisor? Some of the training initiatives. The Basic Police Academy in New York State is a minimum of 700 hours. Here in Monroe County, we are currently over 1,000 hours. The additional 300 plus hours of training is to have additional local topics included in our instructions specific to our communities. As you can see in the left column, this is where the basic education of a police officer begins when relating to people from diverse backgrounds, whether it's ethics and professionalism, cultural diversity, instruction on bias-related incidents, professional communication skills, or interacting with persons with disability. The goal here is to provide a trained officer before they enter into a field training program where they can begin the experiential training with a senior police officer who has been trained in the adult education methods and the rating of new officers. The training period for a new officer is a minimum of 16 weeks. As you can see, a 26-week police academy and another 16 weeks of field training is a significant investment in time and money. Some of our other training initiatives. We provide leadership training to our supervisors so they can effectively supervise and manage their work groups. We have partnerships with our risk management provider, the New York Municipal Insurance Reciprocity, to provide web-based access to several training modules that can be done on a 24/7 basis, which balances fiscal responsibility with the need for training. Our annual and ongoing training produces a well-rounded police officer. As such, 100% of our staff have mental health first aid training. We were actually recertified again this year. Over 45% of our staff are crisis intervention trained, with a future goal of having 100% of our staff trained in crisis intervention, which will assist us in our approach to helping in our response to those in the community in distress. Those 2 specific blocks of instructions are important because there are studies to suggest that 25% of police-involved shootings involve someone suffering a mental health crisis. And we can provide training to recognize those in distress. We can attempt to de-escalate through those skills learned in that training. Everything I just discussed is an attempt to align policy, training, and supervision, which gives us a recipe for success. The policy guides our decisions, the training assists us in implementing the policy, and our supervision manages the incident to ensure compliance and provides immediate feedback if necessary. When one of these systems is out of alignment, it increases the room for error. Our body-worn camera program was instituted back in 2016. We were one of the first agencies to have a controlling policy in place when cameras are activated, leaving no discretion when they are to be activated. As of today, we have over 81,000 video interactions with citizens. We tried several different cameras, but Axon was able to provide us a turnkey system. Part of the consideration with the other cameras was the back-end support through our IT or information technology infrastructure. And this was the best alternative for us to proceed. Since 2016, we have continually reviewed their capabilities of the body-worn camera system. Currently, they are part of a robust use of force reporting system where cameras are reviewed at several administrative levels within the organization. Recently, we instructed and advised all body-worn camera to be reviewed for accuracy with compliance, when arrests are made within the department. Police discipline. Both captains either have or will receive professional training in conducting internal investigations involving our members. Actually, most of the matters result from an internal complaint made by either myself or another command officer. Complaints from citizens can be anything from calling 911 to speak with a supervisor about the explanation of a policy or procedure, up to and including an allegation of misconduct. Looking over about a 5-year average, we receive about 25 complaints a year. It may seem like a lot, but when that's based on about 49,000 calls on average each year, that equates to about 1 complaint per 2,000 calls for service, which is a pretty small number. I plan to add this data for our 2021 annual report moving forward. We also have a robust use of force review where each supervisor of the officer has to review the use of force to ensure its compliance with policy and procedure. We recently added a de-escalation narrative in our use of force reporting to change the thinking of officers before using force. In 2018, the town passed a local law essentially removing union arbitration from the discipline process. What that means is that this wall-kill decision, it's a court case, is in essence a citizen review where the elected officials weigh in on disciplinary matters and actually determine the discipline. There are no better officials to evaluate and consider discipline than elected officials because they are the ones responsive to the community. There's no passing the buck or extra bureaucracy. This slide, I just want to stress how we collaborate here in Monroe County. At least once a month, the Law Enforcement Council, made up from the Monroe County Chiefs of Police, meet to discuss issues that affect law enforcement in the county, either in whole or part, and can work collaboratively to solve problems. We also help to direct training efforts, policy changes, and new initiatives. All the agencies work together to share resources when necessary. Our strength is derived from our partnerships, both internally and externally. We have at times partnered with the New York State Police to provide assistance from their hate crimes task force when an incident occurs in town, or their campus sexual assault task force when a reported sexual assault occurs on a college campus. The Monroe County Sheriff's Office has provided aid in the form of their commercial vehicle enforcement unit, their bomb squad, and even their mounted unit for parades. The FBI has assisted us in cold case investigations, and we work closely with them for those institutions who have a heightened risk and higher profile when it comes to targeted violence. The community organizations aid us in policy development, intentionally or not. The highlight of our January 2021 in-service training was interacting with Dylan and his friends from Campaign D, an autism awareness group that advocates for those who have autism. It's probably the most fun I've seen from officers interacting with community members in a long time in a group setting. Officers at the end of the training even approached me to see how they can build on that relationship, which I plan on doing in 2021. The Forensic Intervention Team, or FIT, is a service provided through Monroe County Resources who have the capability to assist us when interacting with those who experience a mental health crisis. We currently work best with FIT in a post-crisis response to ensure the necessary services are being offered and to interact with the community member at a more relaxed time, rather when they are in a crisis mode. Another long-standing partner in the community has been both the Bavona Child Advocacy Center and Lifespan, who help us with investigating crimes against our most vulnerable populations, children and the elderly. I have to start by stressing that COVID cannot be underestimated in the disruption and all of the initiatives you see here listed in 2020 and now going on into 2021. This level of engagement has been ingrained in all that we do. Each of these events brings about conversations in a less formal setting. For instance, I've participated in panel presentations and group presentations with the Black Student Unions, McQuaid, 12 Corners Middle School. Even though I haven't met with the Brighton High School Black Student Union, my predecessor did, and I intend to get back to doing that once COVID subsides. We do a lot of community engagement, as you can see, whether it's the pizza with the chief, coffee with the cop, or our annual bike rodeo, or our interaction with police explorers. But we are committed to doing more community engagement once it's safe to do so. Community is beyond the borders of Brighton. If we haven't learned as a police organization yet, and as a profession, that incidents that occur across our country or even regionally, they affect us here locally in Brighton. One component of the governor's directive is about community stakeholders to include faith-based alliances. I participate with all three faith-based alliances: the United Christian Leadership Ministry, the Ministers and Police Alliance for Community Transformation, and the Monroe County Alliance for Transformation of Community and Police. And I'm always looking to do more. This is where the relationships are made, where we can have those sometimes uncomfortable conversations, and we can share our perspectives in a non-judgmental way. We had a community forum back in August last year at Temple Brith Kodesh, where we had those discussions on many of the things we are talking about tonight. Myself, along with my other command staff, attended 5 other forums, from Fairport, East Rochester, all the way out to Hilton. We heard and interacted with many community members across a broad spectrum. Some of those recommendations appear in this draft plan. Secondly, the governor discussed evidence-based policing. The partnerships with both Roberts Wesleyan and RIT are going to serve us well in the future. In the plan, you will find our first community survey in over 20 years, and probably longer. I am proud of the work that RIT has done, and even more proud of the results of the efforts of the men and women of this department. As a supervisor was saying, we had 856 responses from the community. Other community surveys with larger agencies I saw with less than 200 responses. The top 4 responses regarding interactions with the Brighton police were professionalism, respectful, helpful, and fair. Further, on page 7 of the RIT report, 90% of the respondents reported Brighton police have a positive relationship with the community. That number alone speaks volume about the men and women in this department. Compassion and empathy are our values we instill in our members, and that reflects in this survey. I do believe as a department, we get it right most of the time. That's not to say that we're perfect, but as the survey shows, we are definitely on the right path. I am still interested in more effective outreach to the marginalized communities. And I recognize that. I'll let the survey speak for itself, and we'll share only a brief synopsis tonight. In the interest of transparency, the survey will be attached to this plan and be made available for the public to read in whole. This is a slide from page 16 of the survey that demonstrates how satisfied people were who had interactions with the Brighton Police Department. Over half, 54%, reported being very satisfied. And I'll quote from the survey: "These results indicate that respondents were overwhelmingly satisfied with their interactions with the Brighton Police over the last 12 months." This chart is from page 22 of the survey regarding the safety and quality of life in Brighton. The numbers are pretty good, with 82% who agree or strongly agree that we take care of the overall safety and security of the community. Even in the marginalized communities, respondents posted a response of 70% believe we take care of the community's overall safety and security. When it comes to maintaining a quality of life, I look at the 57% rating in the marginalized communities, and this is where I think the work needs to be done. I'm committed to increasing our outreach and our response to those members through designated department liaisons and targeted efforts to make inroads in those communities. I plan on bringing procedural justice training to our department, as evidenced in my 2021 goals and objectives. Much of our current training involves components of de-escalation, whether it be mental health first aid or a crisis intervention training. I do plan on bringing more de-escalation training to our department to ingrain and instill those concepts into our culture. We did the 21-day challenge to create dialogue among staff and then followed it up with in-person racial and diversity education, even though it had to be done via Zoom. We are a well-educated police department with 86% of staff with a college education. And I think the most common response from the survey with the description about professional bears that out. We are always looking for ways to expand our training initiatives, especially to aid us in assisting marginalized communities. We have an officer who partners with a member of the FIT team or forensic intervention team that does post-crisis follow-up to those who've experienced an emotional crisis in the community. And this model has served us well. We had over 400 contacts in 2020. We have other members assigned as liaisons to aid our efforts in building bridges and creating relationships in those marginalized communities. And in 2021, I will look for ways to expand those efforts and to create those relationships. The mission of the Brighton Police Department, included in the plan, states, the principal mission of the Brighton Police Department is to serve and protect the citizens of the town of Brighton, remembering that the police must serve all citizens impartially, respecting the rights of individuals regardless of race, creed, or color. My plan is to identify those marginalized groups and conduct a targeted outreach when it is safe to do so. Again, hopefully we can get back to a more robust community engagement when it's safe to do so and restart such initiatives as a Citizens Police Academy, where citizens can interact with the police. I understand the importance of diversity in law enforcement, and I'm committed to doing better. We have a survey in the field by Roberts Wesleyan to assist us in answering how best to identify and recruit a more diversified candidate. Remember, we are competing against every other agency in this county and beyond to diversify our departments. I've spoken to young people in diverse groups like the Police Career Exam Prep, which is assisting in putting diverse members into a law enforcement career pipeline. We have an Explorer program in Brighton, and youth from even outside of Brighton participate, and that is a great way for our youth to explore careers in law enforcement. Promoting a diverse work group is dependent upon members taking a civil service test and being able to score in the top 3, even to be promoted. Hiring new officers requires the same rule of 3. And again, we compete against every other agency in this county trying to hire a diversified workforce. For transparency in our process, I plan on inviting a panel of citizens to participate in the interviewing process to make sure we continue to get the right candidates. We started a community engagement initiative to create better bonds between officers in the community back in 2013. Our annual report actually started tracking these numbers to identify our progress in community engagement. Over the last 2 years, we averaged over 27,000 self-initiated calls for service, which include examples such as foot patrols, structured traffic patrols in neighborhoods, and giving special attentions to those institutions in our community who may have a heightened sense of a security threat. As I mentioned before, we have several initiatives such as DARE, Car Safety Seat Inspection Program, our annual bike rodeo, and even something as simple as officers getting out of their car, walking at the Brighton Farmers Market, engaging with the community. These are all initiatives that will continue when it is safe to do so. This entire slide, to me, represents communication. Every time we interact with a citizen reporting a crime, we give them a victim's rights card with the officer's contact information, and we reinforce that message to staff every chance we get to circle back with the crime victim and those reporting incidents to follow up on their cases. I do agree, FOIL can seem cumbersome at times, but is the best best method to ensure the right people get the right information. We don't release anything that could cause an unwarranted invasion of personal privacy. Our new computer-aided dispatch system and records management system will be going live soon. Once it's up and running, we should be able to have more immediate and reliable data to report out to the community. If I can incorporate a dashboard, if you will, to improve upon our twice a week police blotter or our annual report, I will research such an option. I'm already gathering new data for our 2020 annual report to include as much demographic data on whom we are interacting with in the community, from traffic tickets to arrest data. Another recurring theme from the survey is my support for the Black Lives Matter movement. The chiefs of Monroe County issued a statement shortly after the murder of George Floyd in Minneapolis, and I actively participate with 3 faith-based alliances where the hard work is actually done. I've also spoken to several different Black student unions or groups about these issues. I will continue with those efforts when the pandemic ends. But quite simply, yes, Black Lives Matter. We are still learning, and I plan on continuing the necessary work to provide the community with the highest level of service possible. I'm not sure what those responses will ultimately look like or what the cost will be, but our research will continue into any appropriate alternative responses. Everything we do is aimed at being the most professional organization we can be and not resting with only being good. Everything we've been doing since 2015 is being done in alignment with President Obama's 21st Century Policing Task Force. So I like to think we have a head start on many agencies. That task force report positioned us 5 years ago to be where we are today. I think we do pretty well on all the pillars, but we have more work to do in building trust and legitimacy, which is a constant theme I hear from the community. Communication and transparency are the main objectives of this effort. Just remember, this draft plan is not the end and won't be put on a shelf. It's only a jumping off point and will hopefully guide us for the next 5, 10, or 15 years. Thanks for listening to me this evening. This draft plan will be made available on all of our department's social media sites, to include the town's website, the police department's Facebook page, and my Twitter feed. I look forward to more dialogue in the coming weeks when the community will be able to participate and offer comments. As the supervisor said, next Tuesday at 7 p.m., there'll be more details to follow. But in the meantime, you can offer input at communityinput@townofbrighton.org. Thank you. Are we back?
We're back. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
I appreciate all the time that you and members of your department put into preparing that report, but also the time that you have spent, and I've seen you, I've been there. So many of these interactions, whether it's with Black student unions, whether it's with the faith groups in the community, the Islamic Center, as you mentioned. I appreciate the work that you've done. I look forward to hearing the comments that the community has about your plan and the recommendations, their thoughtful recommendations. I look forward to hearing Tuesday night and beyond as we move towards giving approval to a final plan, submitting it to the state, and then, as you said, using it, not sitting it on a shelf. Thanks. Okay, we will now continue with the meeting. Chris, can I have a motion to approve the agenda? Seems like we've been here for a long time, but we got to approve the agenda.
Bill, I move that we approve the agenda.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember DePonzio,
Aye.
Councilmember Werner,
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt,
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado,
Aye.
Supervisor Maley.
Aye. We have no public hearings or bids tonight, so we will move right to communications. And can I have a motion to receive and file the communications this evening?
So moved.
Second, Robin.
We have from Rick DiStefano, who is the Secretary of the Conservation Board, the Conservation Board's annual report as required by town law. We also have a communication from Dennis Mites at Brighton Volunteer Ambulance advising us of changes in the command there at BVA. There's a letter from County Executive Adam Bello appointing me to the Monroe County Vacant Property Advisory Committee, which is a successor organization to a group that I've been sitting on actually since the county executive was county clerk when he began his work addressing abandoned properties, so-called zombie properties. It is now a task. It has been a task force. It will now be the advisory committee. And those bittersweet ones. We have two retirement letters, one from Lieutenant Dave Swancott from the Brighton Police Department, and one from Chris Podgorski from the Department of Public Works. Two people that have put in a lot of years serving the community. We miss them and we wish them well. We have a motion to receive and file those. Any further discussion on any of those?
Yes, I would just like to take a moment in response to the annual report of the Conservation Board to thank the members of that board. They do good work and they're very dedicated to the sustainability of our community and to focus on how our built environment intersects with our natural environment. And they're highly knowledgeable and very collegial. So many thanks to Chair Dennis Adams, Vice Chair Karen Berger, and members Susan Riblett, Mitchell Nellis, George Smith, and David Bryden for their dedication to service on that very important board.
Thanks, Christine. I do appreciate that. As you can see, a couple of the projects are, significant plan proposals that are currently pending before the town. They are able to weigh in with a perspective that really is important to the approval process. So thank you to all of them.
And forgive me, I neglected to give praise to Rick DiStefano as well for keeping the board on track as secretary.
Thank you, Rick. Further discussion? Hearing none, Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember DePonzio,
Aye.
Councilmember Werner,
Aye.
There you go.
Councilmember Wilt,
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado,
Aye.
Supervisor Maley.
Aye. We will go to committee reports. Robin, Community Services Committee. I have a feeling you've got some upcoming events to announce, among other things.
You got a preview, Bill. You're absolutely correct. Community Services Committee was not scheduled to meet in the intervening time frame between now and our last town board meeting. But as usual, I have some updates from our department heads. From our recreation department, the winter spring 2021 recreation program registration is ongoing. New programs continue to be added to our portfolio. So check the website, your email, and the recreation department Facebook page to stay up to date with all of our latest happenings. We just love to have you join our online community. And I'm pleased to announce special programming, and that is our St. Patrick's Day dinner to go. Registrants can support a small business and enjoy your corned beef and cabbage from home this year. This is a to-go only meal that must be picked up at Timothy Patrick's Irish Restaurant at 916 Panorama Trail between 3 and 5 p.m. on Wednesday, March 17th. The price is $18 per person, and the meal includes 13 ounces of corned beef, potatoes, carrots, and cabbage. Also included, and this is a bonus, an exclusive link to an Irish dance performance from Rochester Academy of Irish Dance, as well as festive themed activities to do at home. And I will note, a computer or internet connected electronic device is required to enjoy this bonus link. Registration for this event will be required by March 15th, 2021 at 3 p.m. You can register online at www.townofbrighton.org/rec or call the Recreation Department at 784-5260 extension 0. Our summer camp details are in the works, so please stay tuned to the Recreation Department Facebook page, website, and your email for upcoming announcements. With weather today, we're finally thinking about summer. So after last year's extremely successful showing, we're putting the finishing touches on another COVID-friendly summer camp program. So please do check us out. And just as a reminder, if you need something, have a question, looking for lodge availability, or need something unexpected from the Recreation Department, you can always give us a call again at 585-784-5260 extension 0, and we'd be happy to assist you. You can also find us on our Facebook page, www.facebook.com/Brighton Recreation, or on our own website, www.townofbrighton.org/rec. An update from our Parks Department. Our Parks Department will be opening up the lodges on April 1st with a gathering size limit of 25 people max. Hopefully, when the warmer weather hits, we can increase this number to 45, which is about half occupancy. The Parks Department has officially filed its full-time department vacancy, filled its full-time department vacancy. Adam Springer was promoted at our last town meeting from part-time to full-time and started in his new role on March 1st. This will be the first time in over a year since February 2020 that our Parks Department will be at full staff. The department continues to work with the Urban Forestry Group led by Brighton High School's George Smith to identify plants, protect, and maintain various park trees. We've set some small scale planting events that will take place the weekends of April 10th through 11th, April 17th through 18th, and April 24th to 25th, and finally May 1st through 2nd. These Arbor Day tree planting events are being scheduled in this fashion in order to accommodate group size restrictions due to current COVID-19 protocols and to permit adequate distancing between participants. Mask wearing will be required for these town sanctioned events. We are partnering with the Brighton Rotary, and the Rotary has agreed to fund the purchase of 200 trees and the materials required to individually fence them. Wire fencing and posts, protection from deer browsing and rub, and from mower and trimmer strikes. So the tree species are somewhat subject to availability and will not be delivered till early April. On a similar note, working with the community, we've been working with Girl Scout Troop 60447 over the past year on an invasive species removal project at the Brickyard Trail. The Scouts identified, mapped out, and removed 7 truckloads of invasives from the trail. 7 truckloads. They included Phragmites, loosestrife, knotweed, and autumn olive, which made a noticeable difference to the landscape. The final phase of the plan will include planting some native dogwoods as a trail buffer in designated areas and putting an operation manual together that outlines a plan for future groups to continue maintenance. Our park staff will be focusing our efforts on trail maintenance and have identified multiple areas in our trail system, which is quite expansive, but needs some maintenance work, as well as parks and trails continue to be, as parks and trails do continue to be heavily utilized as passive and active recreational options. Park staff are currently busy with inventory, preventative equipment maintenance, along with various other projects that have been identified in its ongoing maintenance schedule. And we're also preparing to, quote unquote, open our parks facilities for the spring. We're continuing to identify potential capital improvement projects for future budget input. And the mantra right now is fields, fields, fields. Parks are continuing to receive a large number of spring athletic field requests. We're experiencing the highest request volume that we ever had for field space. We will once again be holding groups to our local COVID-19 policies, as well as any state mandates. And on that note, New York State has lifted the ban on high-risk sports, such as with basketball and volleyball. And as a result, park staff will be reinstalling the basketball rims and volleyball nets in our parks this season. As always, the park staff will continue to monitor and evaluate our department COVID-19 policy to keep both staff and the community safe when we do reopen our facilities on this limited basis. Again, rental facilities will remain closed and reservations are canceled through the end of March. But on April 1st, we will reopen with maximum capacity limits of 25 people, with the intention to increase that maximum to 45 people as weather improves and we continue to monitor the situation. Bill provided some updates to our CCA, but the news continues to be good on that front. Brighton has an active participation rate of 85% in the CCA program. In addition, enrollments continue to increase in our community solar program with Source Power, and we currently have an excess of 840 enrollees. We continue to encourage all who are eligible to sign up, since our supplier, Source Power, will be issuing a monetary benefit to the town from our subscriptions to be used towards additional sustainability efforts within our community. An update to the IDEA, or Inclusion, Diversity, and Equity Advisory Board. The next meeting of the IDEA Board will be tomorrow, March 11th, from 5:30 to 7 p.m. And we will, as Bill mentioned, have staff representatives from the town of Beaverton, Oregon, in our midst to discuss some of their efforts. The next meeting of the Community Services Committee was scheduled to be Wednesday, March 17th, and that is canceled. But we hope sometime in the future we will be able to reconvene in person. That's all I have, Bill. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Robin. Finance, Jason?
Yes, Bill, the Finance and Administrative Services Committee was supposed to have met on March 10th, but due to COVID, we did not meet. But each of the items were circulated with supporting correspondence from our department heads, and will appear on tonight's town board agenda to be discussed and voted on, with the exception of one item, which was to set the date for a public hearing for the purchase of sewer equipment. And that's being held in abeyance so that we can learn more about the relief to local governments that's part of the relief package passed by Congress just today. So we'll stay tuned to hear more about that. But our next meeting would have been held on Tuesday, March 16th. However, due to the pandemic, has been canceled. Thanks.
Thank you, Jason. Christine, Public Safety?
Thank you. Public safety was to have met yesterday, but of course, we will not be meeting in person until the pandemic is further under control. First, I want to thank Chief Catholdi for such an extensive update and for the hard work that has gone into re-envisioning or the evolution of policing in Brighton. We are very lucky to have a police force that is focused on a guardianship culture, not a warrior culture in Brighton. And that is what we would expect in a community like ours. There's great respect for the dignity of all, and it comes through in our police force. Very brief updates. Brighton Fire Department is holding 2 informational sessions in the near future, seeking new volunteers, and those who may, in exploring volunteer roles, may decide to move on to career firefighting. Those informational sessions are virtual due to the pandemic. So from the comfort of your own home, you can explore what it would take to become a firefighter in the Brighton Fire Department. The dates of those volunteer information sessions are Monday, March 15th and Monday, June 21st. Both sessions are 7 to 8 p.m. by Zoom. You can email join@brightonfd.org to register or to learn more. Of course, you can also explore more information at brightonfd.org, the website. I should back up. Residency is not required. Brighton residency is not required to participate in the Brighton Fire Department. And this opportunity is available to ages 14 to 55 plus. And these roles are firefighting and non-firefighting on-scene support. So again, more information at brightonfd.org. As you heard too, there was notice from the Brighton Volunteer Ambulance that there's been a change in leadership. The new acting chief is Assistant Chief Tucker Kostich. Should community members need to reach leadership at Brighton Volunteer Ambulance, Tucker can be, Chief Kostich, forgive me, can be reached at tucker.kostich, Kostich, at brightonambulance.org. And that is all I have for tonight. If everything improves rapidly in the public health realm, we might be meeting in person next month, Tuesday, April 13th at 8 a.m. in Town Hall. Although, even with the increased availability in vaccinations, and with the age limit coming down, getting closer to my age cohort, it is not likely we'll be meeting in person. But please, everyone who is eligible for your vaccine, go get it. Go get it. Sign up, be persistent, and get your vaccine. And that is all.
Thanks for the report, and thanks for that message. So important. Thank you. Chris, Public Works.
Yes, Bill, thank you. The Public Works Committee meets ordinarily on the first Tuesday of the month. Unfortunately, because of pandemic restrictions, we have been unable to meet in person, nor do I anticipate we'll be able to do that in April, but we can always hope. Commissioner Guyon has kept me abreast of the workings of the department there. They continue with their general maintenance. Hopefully we won't have too much more snow to worry about, but otherwise we're back to doing our refuse pickup, et cetera, which I know my neighbors are very active. We've got a pile right out here already. So they'll keep you busy themselves. But the departments continue to work with Monroe County staff to provide the rapid COVID testing by appointment at Temple Birth Kodesh on Tuesdays and Thursdays, with about 300 or 325 tests each of those days. You can make appointments on the county website at www.monroecounty.gov, and you can start making those appointments on Friday, the week prior. The French Road sidewalk bid documents have been advertised and are available on the town's website and are due by March 25th. Town staff continues to finalize projects, including the Farmers Market site improvements, Brighton Memorial Library roof construction, HVAC RFP, request for proposal, for the heating, ventilation, and air conditioning system there. The 5G code amendment, the road condition survey, Elmwood Avenue sidewalk, South Clinton Road sidewalks, North Landing sidewalks, as well as the climate action plan and the multiversity plan. The sidewalk maintenance contract and street lighting contract is on tonight's agenda for approval of that bid. And we've gotten notice from Chris Podorski of his retirement, and the department will be looking to fill that position. Mike, anything to add?
No, Chris, I think you covered it well. I think that does us justice.
A lot.
Yeah.
An awful lot.
An awful lot. We will probably be starting our debris collection mid-April.
Very good. Thanks, Mike. Thanks for your report to me as well.
Great. Okay. Well, we'll move on then to a new business. Jason, reading and approval of the claims.
Yes, Bill. Earlier today, I reviewed claims totaling $531,419.29. Notable claims include to Birch Crest Tree and Landscape in the amount of $17,396.08. For fall of 2020 and January 2021 tree removal services. Also to BLM Construction Company in the amount of $25,835.25 for payment for construction services for the Farmers Market Phase 2 project. Also to Brighton Volunteer Ambulance in the amount of $285,000, representing payment for ambulance services for the Brighton Ambulance Special District. Also to Roberts Wesleyan College in the amount of $6,817.13, representing payment for the community survey related to the Public Safety Diversity Initiative. And finally, to the Depository Trust Company in the amount of $360,650, representing the refunding of the 2016 serial bonds, which were from the Parkland acquisition that took place in 2007. The claims all appear to be in order, and I move that they be approved.
Second, Robin.
Any discussion? Thanks, Jason. Hearing none, Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember DeFazio?
Aye.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt?
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado?
Aye.
Supervisor Maley?
Aye. And Jason, why don't you do the next one as well?
Sure. The next matter seeks to authorize the supervisor to enter into a 3-year agreement with Lexis for computerized legal research online services in an initial amount not to exceed $1,440 or $1,080 for the remainder of the calendar year, and thereafter in an amount not to exceed a 3% annual increase, and to make the necessary 2021 budget transfers for the current year. I move we adopt the resolution as prepared by the town attorney.
Second, Chris.
And Ken, I know you and I talked about this, but and you got yourself a pretty good deal negotiating with them. Why don't you talk about why this and
Sure.
the pricing?
The work that I do often involves giving advice to the elected officials and the department heads. And in order to do that, I need to have reliable legal research at my ready disposal. From day to day, I don't really know what issues I'm going to be presented with. And so it's important for me to have that at my fingertips. And Lexis is a service provider that allows me to access New York State case law. This particular library and package that I have negotiated also includes all New York statutes, annotated, all agency decisions, all agency opinions, all regulations, all federal statutes, all federal regulations, all federal court cases. It's pretty broad. You might think that we wouldn't need to look at federal court cases, being a town in upstate New York, but constitutional issues sometimes arise and necessitate that broad. So it gives us access to look at all of those and to allow me to provide what I believe to be more reliable research than if I were to simply Google a legal research issue. Lexis is specifically designed for use by attorneys to provide the most up-to-date case law and statutory law. So that's why I've sought this. It's a a price I will tell you that is about 1/4 of what my private law firm pays for the exact same library. So I'm very pleased for the town that I was able to negotiate this price. I will say, just to clarify, the resolution that you have in front of you actually sets forth the specific price increases for years 2 and 3, and it will be a whopping extra $4 a month in each of those 2 years. So $4 a month for the second year. That means an extra $48 for the year. And in year 3, an extra $48 for that year as well. So that's the proposal. Happy to take any questions from any of the board members.
Any questions? Thanks, Ken. Hearing none, Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember DePonzio,
Aye.
Councilmember Werner,
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt,
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado,
Aye.
Supervisor Maley.
Aye. Christine.
Yes, the next matter seeks to declare police vehicles as surplus to be sold at auction. And I move that we adopt the resolution before us.
Second.
Chris.
Chris, thank you. Discussion, you have the listing of vehicles there. Let me scroll down to it.
Yep, 3 vehicles,
Three vehicles.
2017 Ford utility vehicle, another 2017 Ford utility vehicle, and a 2011 Chevy Impala, all to be sold.
Utility.
Any discussion?
What is a utility vehicle? What is a utility vehicle? Is that a pickup truck?
No, it's
SUV.
the SUV.
Oh, okay.
And each one of those utilities have over 115,000 miles. And the Chevy Impala is 10 years old with nearly 90,000 miles on it.
Wow.
They get driven hard. Couple just went by a minute ago. Something's going on. Okay, any other questions? Then we have a motion and a second. Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember DePonzio,
Aye.
Councilmember Werner,
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt,
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado,
Aye.
Supervisor Maley.
Aye. Chris.
The next item is to authorize a bid award to Cacamese Electric Corporation in an amount not to exceed $6,000 for the 2021 street lighting maintenance contract for a term of 1 year with an option of 3 additional 1-year terms. I move that we adopt the resolution before us.
Second, Robin.
Thank you both. Ken, it's not, do you interpret this that the renewal, does the board need to take action to do the renewal, or is the supervisor authorized to approve the renewal without going back to the board?
So with the Cacamese Electric contract, technically you could approve without going back to the board, but this bid, because of its unique nature, is a renewal based upon mutual consent. So
Right,
the pricing very well could change. And if the pricing changes, you may wish to talk with the board and get the board's approval. If the pricing stays the same, you may find you don't need to do that. But if the pricing does change, if Cacamese comes back and says because parts have gone up, or mostly that would be what we were talking about, if parts go up, that they're going to need to increase their price, you may want to go back to FASC, you may want to go back to the board and get them.
Okay. Sounds good. So Chris made the motion, and who seconded that? Or did someone? Robin did. Thank you. Thanks, Ken. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember DePonzio,
Aye.
Councilmember Werner,
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt,
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado,
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy.
Aye. And Chris, why don't you do the next one as well?
The next item is to authorize a bid award to Roman Construction in an amount not to exceed $169,580 for the 2021 sidewalk repair program for a term of 1 year with an option of 3 additional 1-year terms. I move that we adopt the resolution before us.
Second, Christine.
Thank you. Discussion.
And Bill, I see that the option, and Ken, help me here as well, is at our discretion only. That
Correct.
we have the right to this same contract amount. I noticed, Mike, that their bid came in about $2,000 higher than this as budgeted. That was, they consented to that small reduction.
Correct, Chris. The bid set up as a unit price. So basically we just reduce the amount of work to be done based on unit price to keep it at that reduced value. I was honestly very impressed that the pricing came in as close as it was, particularly with the price increases we've seen in the construction industry recently. So I think it's a good bid.
It looks like a very good bid and very competitive compared to others.
And Ken, I'll ask again, renewal.
So we have something built into this contract which allows us to unilaterally renew, but I need to bring this to your attention. The contractor can, under the terms of the contract, establish with the town an increase in material price based upon what material prices are, and based on a formula that's set forth in the contract, could ask for a price increase for subsequent years. But they have to establish that, and we've set up, Mike and I have set up a fairly careful process which would give us the right to review that. So the choice is ours to renew. They cannot change their price unless they establish that there is, under the specific provisions of the contract, a material increase, a price increase in the materials that they would be using for the sidewalk repairs.
And for that reason, you would anticipate coming back to the town board?
Again, not required, but in your discretion, Supervisor, if there is a price difference that is within the parameters of the contract and the formula, there is no lawful reason for you to come back. You may just wish to, in courtesy to your fellow town board members,
okay,
and to let them know what's going on. If there is a price increase outside of what would otherwise be allowed, then that would be an extra contractual increase, which would absolutely require this going back through, because it would be a modified contract overall.
Right. Okay, good. Any other comments? Any other questions? We have a motion and a second. Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember DePonzio,
Aye.
Councilmember Werner,
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt,
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado,
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy.
Aye. And Robin, the last item?
Certainly. So the last item seeks to authorize the supervisor to issue a request for proposals for a community survey about town parks and recreation department services. I move that we adopt a resolution as prepared by the town attorney.
Can I have a second?
A second, Christine.
And although the agenda talks about services, just to be clear, it's our expectation that there will also be service facilities related services as part of this RFP. But that's all set forth in the actual resolution and in the RFP that is just about completed. We have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Hearing none. Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember DePonzio,
Aye.
Councilmember Werner.
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt,
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado,
Aye.
Supervisor Maley.
Aye. I've talked enough tonight, so there are no further matters of the supervisor. Matters of the town attorney.
Only a couple matters involving litigation for executive session, please.
Sounds good. Matters of the clerk.
I just wanted to give everybody an update. It's already looking at the elections at this point, and I'm trying to find new locations once again. So with COVID still ongoing, there's still a number of our senior communities where it's just not a good time for lots of strangers to be in the building, even with their vaccinations that many of them have now. So we're still looking for some alternative locations. A couple of meetings, a couple of stops tomorrow morning with the Board of Elections to review a few potential locations. So hopefully those will be locked in soon. And the Board of Elections mailing for your polling places is scheduled for I think the middle part of April. So it should be hitting your mailboxes in about a month.
Dan, in yesterday's expansion of eligibility for vaccinations, one group that was added was election workers. Does that include election inspectors? Do we know?
I did not see that addition, so I have no idea.
Okay.
But I'm meeting with them tomorrow, so I can ask.
Sounds good. I hope it does. Obviously, we want to get as many people as humanly possible vaccinated. Matters of the board.
I have one item, Bill.
Sure.
I know that there have been some inquiries about our spring recycling events, and I want to announce that for our spring 2021 electronics recycling and secure document shredding event, our vendors are coordinating to conduct our first ever Sunday morning electronics recycling and secure document shredding event. So, and we anticipate that moving forward, we'll be able to implement a schedule where we can kind of alternate between Saturdays and Sundays to make the event more accessible for everyone in the community. So currently we are slated to hold that first ever Sunday event on Sunday, May 16th. And as usual, it will take place from 9 a.m. to 12 noon at the Brighton Highway Department, 1941 Elmwood Avenue. And so that was the good news. And unfortunately, I want to announce that given that the Brighton Central School District campus remains largely closed to the public at this time, the logistics for our annual Clean Sweep event, as we traditionally conducted, are simply not feasible. So we're in discussions with the Brighton Believe Council and Betsy Balling to coordinate some other type of community give back event that will be drive-in. And we're gonna hold that event when we would have traditionally held Clean Sweep, so that would be Saturday, May 8th. We're working with Corpac, a community member, to kind of coordinate something probably in recognition of National Nurses Week. So please stay tuned for that event and keep your calendars open. That's all I have.
Very nice, thank you. Then can I have a motion to go into executive session to discuss matters of litigation?
So moved.
I heard Chris first, so I'll treat you as a second, Jason.
All right, sounds good.
Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember DePonzio,
Aye.
Councilmember Werner,
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt,
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado,
Aye.
Supervisor Maley.
Aye. Thank you again, everybody, for attending tonight. Thank you again, Chief, for your presentation. I do not anticipate that we will be coming out of executive session and back into public session. So our next town board meeting, which will again be held remotely, will be on Wednesday night, March 24th at 7 p.m. Have a great evening, everybody. Good night.